Recording. Oh my gosh. Welcome to Reality Reconsidered. My very first guest. We're here in the Boston area. I'm Michael Carey, and this is Al Smith. Welcome, Al.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored to be your first.
I know, it's exciting. We started a UFO discussion group through Meetup a couple of years ago. And years before that, we went to the UFO festival in Exeter, the Exeter UFO Fest. And that's where he and I met originally.
Yes.
Remember that?
Labor Day weekend, yes.
Probably a good 5 years ago by now. Richard Dolan was speaking. I think
Stanton Friedman.
Stanton Friedman. Really? That same?
Not that year, but
yeah. Oh, he's been there before he passed away. So quick introduction in case you haven't seen much about my channel. Reality Reconsidered is really about reconsidering not just consciousness or existence on this earth and the reality that we're told, but also political reality. You know, the reality of our social and economic situation, our currency, our, food politics. I mean, whatever reality that you've been indoctrinated in, it's right now, it's 2021. We're February, what is it? 17th?
Yeah, around.
Oh, 17th. Oh my gosh.
Did I cue you to say that?
Oh, but he cued me. See how that works? So yeah, seriously, it's the 17th. Yeah, because Valentine's Day was on Sunday. For me, I'm just going to do like a quick thing. Back in 2005 or so, after doing some psychedelic mushrooms, I actually looked into 9/11 mysteries, the just alternative views on 9/11. Then that led me to the Corbett Report, James Corbett, InfoWars, Alex Jones. I later realized he's just an imposter. I mean, he's selling fear and anger. So, but he was educational at the time. I looked into JFK. The Disclosure Project, Stephen Greer, Stephen Bassett, Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe, and then the Defense Minister Paul Hellyer of Canada.
Right.
So that really got me into this UFO segment and made me take it more seriously. But I chose Al as the first guest because he, we all have different backgrounds. He grew up in this Boston area, in what, Somerville?
Somerville. Yeah.
I grew up in Central Mass, but what was your story like? How did you get into this?
I was 10 years old. I was born in 56. My aunt Bernadette, who worked at Polaroid, went to see, went to a UFO lecture. I was too young to go. So my eldest sibling, Robert, went, and they came home, and I'm trying to think of who it was, but it was 1966. And it was a contactee. I can't remember his name right now. I'm having a little blank on who it was.
No worries.
But
go with the flow.
They came back talking about what they experienced. I vaguely remember that, and I was curious about what they were talking about. And then on TV came Invaders from Mars, a science fiction movie that was pretty spooky, where the parents got sucked into a sand hole and were transformed and had a mark on the back of their neck, so they had been abducted by these creatures that were it's a cheap science fiction movie. In the tunnel, there was supposed to be rocks, but it was like balloons. You could see them moving, bouncing around. But the whole idea of your parents not being who you thought they were, that they were transformed and altered some way, that was very spooky. Almost like that movie, the San Francisco, The Pods. That science fiction movie was great. I'm having trouble remembering some of these names. But I think Adamski was the person in 66. George? I think it was that. Was he still around 66? It might have been that my aunt saw Adamski. And then the Barney Betty Hill Interrupted Journey book came out around that time, I believe, too. And the incident at Exeter came out around the same time.
Exeter, New Hampshire.
Exeter, New Hampshire. So Barney and Betty Hill was Indian Head on Route 3 up in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. So that abduction scenario, that was the first real abduction scenario that came out into the public, even though there had been some others in South America that were documented pretty well, but we weren't hearing about them. So
Mhm.
that was big. And that was on like the Mike Douglas was a talk show. And I think he had them on, interviewed them. So it was, Betty Hill. And so it was pretty prominent for a while. And it just fired my imagination. And it's why me? My brother is sort of curious, but he went to the talk, but it didn't stick with him. And it stuck with me more so. So I've kept with it now all these years later, 54 years. Now that I realize I've been interested in this subject for 54 years. I've gone to MUFON meetings, and there was a gentleman there that felt that if anyone had this deep curiosity, that must mean they're an experiencer. I have no conscious recollection of having anything happen. I've seen some lights in the sky. On a Christmas morning 2 years ago, I had my binoculars watching the International Space Station go by in Saugus, Mass. You can go to spot the station, and you can find out when it's going to be flying over. It looks like Venus, sort of a white dot that goes across the sky. It's only 200 miles up, but it's going 17,000 miles an hour. So it's kind of fun to see it go over. So I was watching it through the binoculars, and as it went off below it, relative to the way I was looking at it, I saw this chevron type, almost like a thumbnail, gray, like a shark color gray image go by. And that was the only UFO flying saucer I've ever seen. I don't think it was anywhere near the space, shot of the International Space Station, but relative to me, there it was in my binoculars, just for a brief second, it went by.
And
with
in
no
that,
lights.
in that split second, did you think to yourself that that was an anomaly, that there's no way that was it compelling, or was it just kind of
it was like, what was that? What is that? And I was on a curve of a street, and of course I heard a car coming, so I didn't want to make sure no one was going to hit me. It was 5:30 in the morning, Christmas morning. It was dark and cold, and I took a step back and tried to see if I could find it again, but it just went across, like just right doing its own thing. No lights at all, and it was like a shield, like a thumbnail, a flat ending, but a semicircle. Pretty intriguing. So I've just been with this all these years. It's a great mystery. Most people are busy just trying to survive and earn a living, and none of my friends are deeply into it. That I grew up with. I have friends from childhood that no, they don't care, and parents that have come and gone. They don't, oh, okay. Family members, but I'm the lone wolf in my family that is so into this.
Well, it's kind of cool because you were a hockey player.
Right.
I mean, an up-tempo thinker early on, at least, right? What was your position?
Defense, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so then there's that sort of, well, everyone's different. I'm not going to speculate, but there's this like maybe a social confidence within a group where if you just gonna stick to your guns, if you're curious about something, you go for it, you just research it,
Yeah,
what I mean?
dive into it. I remember arguing about life on Mars. I remember when they were first sending probes. I was probably 14 years old. It was probably like late 60s. And I was saying, there's life on Mars, I bet you. I remember making a bet with a guy named Kevin Ahern in Somerville, and I don't know where he is now, and saying, yeah, they're going to find life. There's life there. And I wasn't meaning like little green men, but I meant that life does exist off planet. Because even back then, that still today, we're not positive that anything exists anywhere else. There could be religious reasons for people believing that, or egoic special conditions or something. But even to this day, we don't have the proof that there's, in a lot of people's eyes, that life could be somewhere else. There's still that. And that's one of the things is I find, if we look relatively like how we hold things, during the 60s, some people could accept that there were spaceships from another world visiting, but they couldn't go far enough that there were beings inside those spaceships, which I find so strange. He's making sure.
Just making sure, the microphone.
But can you imagine
everything's good.
Then the UFO groups would say, "Oh yeah, those are UFOs. Those are flying saucers. They're from other worlds." But if you started getting into the beings inside,
people get freaked out.
It's just
too far. Yeah, it's just a
Isn't
little too weird.
Well, they weren't. We didn't even know what drones were.
Yeah, right.
We didn't even know the word drone or drones. But
well, a lot of our audience, I mean, you guys watching, you probably have seen the Ancient Aliens series, or you've seen, these hundreds of reports, thousands, of some of them, even if half of them, it really only takes one of them to be legit to prove this whole thing. But if half of them were government craft or secret craft, fine. But the other half, they're just way too many anomalies. it doesn't necessarily prove, aliens like bodies. But then, of course, when you get into David Jacobs and all these abduction, or the South African, the guy at Harvard, the psychology professor,
John Mack.
John Mack,
Yep.
his work, unbelievable stuff. You just cannot possibly take on all this. You just basically scratch the surface of this body of research over the past 40, 50 years. And if you're not, it's not like you have to be convinced, but it's just, if you're not totally engaged, then fine. But there is so much compelling evidence,
Yeah, we have to mention Richard Dolan.
Richard Dolan, yeah, Stephen Greer, Stephen Bassett, John Mack, Linda Moulton Howe. There's so much there. I wanted to create a little more structure. Oh, basically, recently, just last week, we've learned that former Israeli Space Force administrator
Yeah.
Haim something, can't remember his last name, Hebrew last name. So basically came out and said, I'm ready to just disclose that we've known about UFOs and ET visitation. And he believes he knows or claims that all other governments are on the same page, and that he feels that if he had said this just 5 years ago, he'd have been locked up, right? I mean, some of you have probably seen those headlines. It was in
the Israeli press.
Yeah.
And he has a book out.
Does he? Yeah.
And he's retired. He's 80 years
okay.
old and retired, and he has a book out.
Okay. But it was in some American journals like ABC, CNN, some mainstream stuff. So it could be that, whatever deep state or cabal that you might think is controlling the mainstream corporate American press, could be some good guys in there that are just saying, hey, if we don't do it now, China or Russia or whoever is going to start to disclose. I mean, disclosure has been happening on a trickle, sort of organic basis, Who knows? But that was pretty cool. I mean, I heard, who's the British guy?
Pope?
Yeah, Nick Pope had said, this is very compelling. He said, this is really significant.
Now, Laura Logan, who's a regular journalist, she had on the guy, the billionaire that Bassett, was it? Or who was the Skinwalker Ranch guy?
Oh, yeah.
And he said they're amongst, she was doing an interview, and he goes, oh, they're here. They're amongst us.
Oh, yeah.
The extraterrestrials are amongst us. And
a lot of people believe that.
He's this billionaire guy that funded different research.
Skinwalker Ranch and a couple, I can't think of his name either.
Yeah, but George Knapp from Talk Radio, from Coast, we have to mention.
Well, he was also just a regular local reporter in Las Vegas first.
Yeah.
Vegas, I mean, he was,
But that's a good site, though, to look at. It's a radio show that's on AM radio, syndicated nationwide. George Norrie is the host. It's called Coast 2, T-O, coastam.com. And that site has a lot of interesting, authors on and guests. Mm-hmm. And from there, you can, do a lot of research if you're into this, like we are. And you can find some good stuff. Just to look at their website gives you a lot of names of people to look up. And they give a little synopsis every night of what was on late at night. If you're in Boston, it's on from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. But you can sign up for for a very small amount of money and get their podcasts and things. But you can just go on free and check out what they're about. But George Knapp is a guest host on that. And he is from Nevada, Las Vegas. But he did a lot of research, interviewing of Bob Lazar.
Oh, yeah.
Bob Lazar.
The original from 1989, Bob Lazar story. And then it was redone. It's on Netflix. I just watched it last night. Another producer did kind of a remake and a reinvestigation of Bob Lazar just last year. And it's Bob Lazar is, a scientist and physicist who claims to, and I believe it's true, that he went to MIT and Caltech and was recruited to work on reverse engineer UFOs and work on dismantling them in Groom Lake. It's not Area 51, but it's right near
Dreamland.
Yeah,
there's one area.
And he made those claims, but since it was all top secret, he initially didn't release his real name, and then couldn't verify some of the details, and probably the deep state or the people who are behind this whole thing pulled all his data from ever having attended MIT or Caltech. So it made the reporting that much more nebulous. But when you listen to him speak and you look at his body language, and I mean, I believe that he saw what he saw, especially when you overlap it, you know, corroborating evidence of all these other people who claim to have seen in military, deep underground military bases, or in, you know, seen test flights of all these crafts from the 40s through the 50s, 60s, 70s. So
an interesting thing that some people say, if it was true, we'd all be talking about it, all be there, and people wouldn't keep secrets about it, because there seems to be a myth that secrets can't be kept. But the stealth fighter and stealth bomber, the stealth fighter was built out there in Nevada, and there were people working on different parts, but not the whole, like a puzzle. But they knew they had a good thing going. They were on a government contract. They had a career there, and they didn't want to follow it up. So they kept the secret out in that area of the town there. And there were restaurants and industries, you know, around there supporting it. So for years, the stealth bomber or the stealth fighter, no one knew what it was, and there were even sightings of it. And people were trying to make models, the model airplane people that, you know, build models of cars and airplane. They were trying to guess what it was, and the pilot saw it once and described it, and it ended up being the stealth fighter. But that secret was kept.
well, also the Manhattan Project.
Oh yes,
right?
that too.
100 people, 100 intelligence officers, military compartmentalization. Everyone is told a different variation of a lie at every level. So if someone happens to leak information, the people above them know which level it was from. It's a standard military, you know, I was never in the military, and my dad was, but I mean, not military intelligence, but you know, we're learning that the lie is different at every level, specifically so that they can contain a breach or a leak, you know, so they have little disinfo in there. And so, but even without the disinfo, I mean, it's compartmentalized. I mean, nobody knows. They're actually deliberately told that this is what the whole point of your project in your team. Here's what we're doing. Here's our end goal, and that end goal is probably made up. So each compartment thinks they're working on something, when in fact could be any number of things, and that's part of the standard practice. So you just contain it. You know, you contain people's curiosity.
As far as the curiosity too, is that if this is true, that we're being visited, have been visited, and if it ever comes out, the disclosure, it's earth shattering. It changes our whole psyche and the whole world, changes everything. So it's a great mystery right now, curiosity, mystery. And if it does come up, the world's going to change.
Absolutely. When you look at if you as a viewer have not seen Stephen Greer's movies about really, I mean, there are multiple movies, but they all talk about the 0 point energy or free energy that's connected to these craft. If populations knew about it and were freely available, you know, if that were a thing, it only takes a couple really smart people to put that into a 3D printer or some kind of open source thing to create a new financial system, so that we don't need. I mean, it would take all the Federal Reserve and all the old world order people off of oil, coal, and gas. I mean, right? All the currency is based off of either moving in to get oil, coal, gas from countries so that they can create money out of thin air, or you know, creating wars, controlling both sides of the wars, you know.
We should make note that if you're in Texas, you're probably not going to see this for a while, because you have no electricity. Because right now what's going on is a deep freeze down south. It's like 18 degrees in Dallas, and ice and snow. And 23% of Texas energy for electricity is from turbines, the wind turbines. They've been bullied into this. This oil-rich state has been bullied into the turbines, and for whatever reason, their turbines are not weather resistant.
Yeah,
Maybe ours are.
we're not planning for I guess they weren't planning for this, or maybe they were planning for that. Reality reconsidered. Reconsidered the real. Maybe they
all
were
the
planning.
plan.
It's all.
And maybe they could. Well, now we're going to talk about controlling the weather.
Oh, oh yeah, yeah.
They
he'll get Chris Berger in here. Yeah.
So, but it's very. If you look, you'll see. Look back, you see what's going on. Go to AccuWeather and see what's going on in Texas, or it has if you're seeing this down the road. But it's terrible, and brownouts. And friends of mine told me in their apartment, in homes, the temperature's in the 40s inside the home. And a few people have died from carbon monoxide poisoning in their cars to warm up.
Oh.
But I got word today, a friend of mine told me that their friend lives in an apartment complex and the temperature is in the 20s. For some reason, the insulation is different than a home.
Of
It's
course,
probably
yeah.
just
And in
brick or whatever.
Texas, a lot of these poor areas in Texas,
Yeah.
buildings are not made. I mean, all the pipes just freeze right away. They're just made South Texas. I mean, it never freezes. Why would a contractor or a builder or a homeowner spend hundreds of extra money on insulation?
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So we have the water is not safe because they can't. The pipes are broken and they can't. The electricity is inconsistent, so they can't pump it. Can't get gasoline. The pumps at the gas stations are not working. Electricity.
Crazy.
So it's this idea of the Green New Deal, and it's not reliable. It's intermittent. Solar panels and the wind farms, they're intermittent, and you can't live that way intermittently. So even one with a Glenn Beck radio show, he couldn't even go on the air Monday. He has a whole studio. I don't know if Alex Jones is in Austin. I don't know. I haven't listened to him lately. But
me neither, and I'm proud of that.
But Glenn Beck couldn't go on the Blaze Network. Couldn't do a show,
Oh boy,
a live show Monday because of it. So some of these ideas are very lofty to try to get solar and wind. But if this technology that the extraterrestrials have, whenever it's time for them to allow us to have it, that's is it up to them?
I think we already have it. It's just a matter of which faction of the deep state or who's keeping it under wraps. In black ops. Yeah, I don't know, but when it comes out, it's going to come out for real. We're going to have a golden age of some sort. Hopefully.
It's so deep philosophically that it's almost like where parts of us are England, the King of England, and we have ships and cannons and all. And then we come over and visit these tribes, these tribal people. And there still seems to be an elitism, and then like the working people. And this New World Order is almost like this King of England type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're deciding and dictating what kind of life we should live, and should we move up to this other type of lifestyle. And they want to reduce the population is what we hear. So they don't really need manpower, just like families don't need 10 and 12 kids now because the healthcare is better. People live longer. The wife doesn't die in childbirth, giving childbirth. So people having smaller families. But there's so many socioeconomic, philosophical, spiritual issues with this.
Absolutely.
If you're going to release this energy, all of a sudden, what are we going to do? A lot of us are staying home doing nothing now because of COVID,
right?
And we're getting paid off minimally to stay. The pajama club, someone was calling it today. A lot of people at home in their sweatpants and pajamas, getting paid, working a little, some not working at all. So there's a real transition going on.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep. And if anyone knows about GESARA or NESARA, that's a whole other thing. Global Economic Recovery Act.
Oh, the reset?
It's different from the reset, but it's apparently there's an alliance that came from the BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and 150 other countries who signed on years ago to create something that's going to fight against the Fed, because they knew that this was the Fed, the Federal Reserve, the IMF, and the World Bank were all based off of the petrodollar and invading countries to get cheap oil to prop up the fiat currency, right? And so the alliance, the BRIC nations, were in contact with some good ETs apparently, who either they're going to use release free energy or use blockchain technology like Ripple or XRT. Yeah,
and Bitcoin.
Bitcoin might be one of two. But in GESARA, version, they're going to have 1 million silver coins, 1 million gold coins, with 1 million blockchain coins. And I don't know if Bitcoin will be a player in that, or if they're going to have their own sort of, but between the three of those, they will be able to have a transparent and, proportional, egalitarian, what's the word, equitable sort of a global financial system. The reset, what that we hear about from the deep state, like the New World Order crowd, is slightly different. I don't fully understand it. Leave a comment in the comment section, because I don't. That's more research I got to do. But hopefully this Jasarev plan is coming out, because Trump went into low profile mode down in Florida after Biden is supposedly in power now. I don't really think he's having a lot of power, but we'll see. And but as a first video, as a first conversation, that's a good 20 minutes or so. I don't know, maybe 30 minutes.
Yeah, time
Can't
flies.
see the time. Yeah, time flies. So we're going to do other segments. Please like, share, subscribe, and leave questions or comments in the comment section. Thank you, Al Smith.
My pleasure.
All right, cheers. End meeting.